Well, welcome to the Distance to Empty podcast, the podcast where we talk about 200 plus mile ultramarathons and multi day events. I am your host, Kevin Goldberg, and I'm here with everyone's favorite co host, Peter Noyes. Our podcast is sponsored by Jonji, and we are here today on the week of Badwater 135. Peter, are you running that?
I'm on the list. No, I'm running it, but yeah, I'm in that mode of panic buying, panic everything.
And we're a little late getting an episode out this week, so this is going to drop just a few days before the race. And how's it going? You feeling ready for it?
As ready as I can be. I think recovering from the monster was tough, but I'm gonna toe the line and see what happens.
What's your fueling strategy? Just so we have it here for the world to know, so that we can go back and see if you stuck to it, and so that I can remind you that you said you're going to eat this and drink that when you're in this thing, and we're trying to force feed you things.
Pretty simple and things that have worked for me in my most recent races. So never second gels, trolley, octopus gummies, scratch hydration, Mountain Dew, chocolate milk, Gator Light.
Okay. You seem very muted today. Are you scared?
No, I'm not scared. I just got allergies and whatever.
It's going to go great. It's going to be awesome.
No, it is. It always does. I always feel like this before the race.
Well, it's been a whirlwind. The reason this episode is late is because Peter's prepping for Badwater. I'm flying out there at the end of this week. I just got back from Western States, crewing and pacing Gabe Peterson. That was awesome. Such a whirlwind out there. So fun to see everyone. Busy summer, fun stuff.
Race season. We're in the thick of it.
In the thick of race season. All right, speaking of race season, the guest we have today just finished a big one. We're coming off a DNF at the Arizona Monster 300, and they crushed the Tahoe 200. So we wanted to have them back on the podcast to talk about it. This person is a 3-time guest now, but this is the first time that they've been the focus of the episode, the actual guest. In the previous episodes, they've helped us with course previews and stuff like that. So we're stoked to chat with Joe Corcione of Everyday Ultra, coaching and podcast himself. And let's get into his Tahoe 200 adventure, and also just a bunch of musings about the 200 plus mile distance in general. Joe, welcome back to Distance to Empty. What's up?
I feel like you guys are like my best friends now. I've been on the show like 3 times now, so it's awesome. And the show just gets better and better every time I come on too, like with all the episodes and everything. I listened extensively to the Tahoe recap that you did with Chad Bruce, I think it was last year in preps for Tahoe. So it helped a ton. So thank you again for having me. And as always, thanks again for putting out such a great show. This is friggin' awesome.
Heck yeah, we're stoked to have you back. Yeah, this is your 3rd time, but it's your first time as like the guest, the focus. You've been like you've helped us on the other episodes, so we're very appreciative as well. So I think we are exactly a week from finishing Tahoe as we're recording this here today. How are you feeling?
Oh man, yeah, it is crazy because someone told me once when I did my first 100 miler, I remember I got destroyed on my first 100 miler. Like I was wrecked, like my legs hurt. I was so tired. And someone came up to me and they were like, it gets easier with every like 100 that you do. And I was like, oh, okay. So, I did multiple hundreds like here and there. And I found that to be true. Like it did feel like the recovery went easier. And so I was like, okay, I did Cocodona last year. And I was like, after these 200s, like it's probably going to get easier. And, this is my second 200-mile finish. And, I can say I can't agree with that statement yet because I just feel so exhausted and just so tired. I mean, obviously we can go into it, but like my sleep situation was kind of all over the place and I definitely lost my mind out there, but I've been slowly coming back to reality and probably drinking enough caffeine to put me in the hospital on a regular day. But I'm feeling very like accomplished from the race and just so proud of like what had happened out there. That's worth all this fatigue I'm feeling for sure.
So when you look back to starting, Tahoe this year and kind of how it unfolded, you had a top 10 finish. So did it just feel like everything was clicking and the race really went your way, or was it a struggle to get to that finish line?
Whew, It's a pretty loaded question. I came into this race like really wanting to compete, and I wanted to, and I knew that this race was going to have a lot of great athletes out there: Killian, Pete Mortimer, Mike Greer, Aaron Kabala. Unfortunately, like a lot of the top contenders did end up, dropping out due to various different reasons, which was unfortunate. But I knew that I had a chance to compete out there, and I was feeling really good about it. Now, Tahoe is kind of a race that's like out of my strong suits. Like I'm definitely more of like a flatter, faster runner. So like Cocodona, Moab, like those courses like would play more to my strengths. And so faster, flatter runner, you go to Tahoe at elevation. I live in Phoenix, like is way out of my comfort zone. But I always like encourage people, like if there's races that are way out of like your, I would say not even just comfort zone, but area of strengths, right? Like something that you're really good at. It's so good every once in a while to push that boundary, because I think we can get so locked up in the position of like, I am a fast and flat runner, or I am not good at the mountains. And we kind of live that identity out because we keep saying it and we only do races that go into that mode. But I really think as like a well-rounded, not only athlete, but person, like when you put yourself in those situations that push yourself to be better and to learn, like you might find that maybe you weren't as bad as you thought you were in those scenarios. And, for me going into this, I really wanted to show myself that I can compete in the mountains and I can put together a pretty good race. And I truly felt in that start line like I can get on the podium. So, through a turn of events, I mean, ended up getting top 10, sixth male, ninth overall, and not the podium finish. But I think a lot of the times when you have these races, and I truly believe that this was the epitome of Tahoe for me, like I faced so many just like crazy stuff. I mean, majority of Tahoe Lung. I mean, I got Tahoe Lung, I think at mile 20, and it just never really went away. And I couldn't breathe really well. I couldn't even get like any of like my paces up to where I wanted to be, even though physically like my heart rate was at like 115 and like I felt so good. I just couldn't get that engine rolling. But I believe that no matter what the result is of a race, even if it's far off your time goal or place goal or anything as such too, if you give your best foot forward and you do your very best at even when maybe life deals you the crappiest hand possible, the race deals you the crappiest set of Tahoe Lung ever, if you can go through and do the very best you can, like that's a win. And I fought for like every mile of that, and I look back on that and I'm so proud of that. So I honestly would have been, I'm way more proud of like where I finished, like as if I got into the podium and knew that I had left something on the table. Because for me, I think the measure of success is like, did you give it your all and did you believe in yourself the entire way? And if the answer is yes, yes. And so for me, like that's what clicked, even though the race, if you just dissect it and we can go into it, didn't really click. Like we can kind of talk about that, but it was a struggle through and through for 200 miles.
So I feel like that's such a, like, especially in recent years, like that's become the trend with Tahoe, and not just for you, I'm talking about like everyone. And it seems to have happened when they moved this race to June.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I've done this myself, but I've heard many people recommend Tahoe as being like one of the best first timer 200, one of the quote unquote easier 200s out there, which is, obviously they're all super, super hard, but Tahoe is really hard. Why do you think it has this like first timer easy reputation when I mean, we can go into what makes it so hard, but it is not an easy race. So how did it get this sort of like, oh, go to Tahoe for your first 200?
Yeah, it's so funny you say that, because if you were to ask me, and a lot of people ask me after Tahoe, what would be a good first 200? And honestly, I don't know if I put that in this specifically because of the Tahoe Lung. Like, I think that stuff is like really, really tough. You move it to September, I mean, it has its own more set of challenges like storms and colder weather and things like that too. But I think where the perception kind of comes from this course of like maybe it being a good first timer is, I mean, the trails are so buttery, so smooth, so runnable. And it is just a trail runner's dream out there. The views are so good. So you can kind of, if you're in a mental low spot, you just take a look to the left and you're like, wow, like I'm in this beautiful place. It's amazing. And I think it's so awesome. But man, this race is really tough. And I think for two different reasons. Yeah, the Tahoe Lung alone is really tough just because, and someone made a really good point to this. Is Lauren, Harry Sabertis' fiance. She saw me at one of the aid stations, and I remember she was like, "How are you doing?" And I was like, "I cannot breathe out here. I got this towel on." And she goes, "Well, it's good that you knew that this was going to happen because you're not freaking out." And I was like, "That's actually a good point, because I'm sure." And I've spoken with a lot of people. People were dropping out because they thought that something really serious was happening. Because if you can't breathe, that's a scary feeling. I mean, I was even scared multiple times, even knowing that I had Tahoe Lung, that something serious could happen. But I think with that, the way that I equate Tahoe Lung, at least from in my experience, was I felt like I was doing a speed workout for 180 miles. And that is so mentally exhausting. And I think that part is tough. Now, Tahoe Lung aside, I do think a few things do make Tahoe pretty tough. I think the length of the aid stations in between each other are very long. Now, I know a lot of the destination trail races do have longer aid station stuff, but you have 18 miles with 3 to 4K of gain. And late into a race, like that's a long period of time to go without aid. Even the 13.9 mile section with Powerline, that's long because you either have the descent, which kind of takes a while, or you have the ascent, which is, usually in the hot of the day and you're kind of getting smoked and stuff. So I think like not getting that aid frequently enough can make it really, really tough as well. And then also if you're like me and you're not graced with living in a place with less oxygen pressure, like you got the altitude, which granted you're in the highest parts in the beginning, but even later on, like once you're exhausted and fatigued, like, I mean, that also messes with sleep and things like that too. So I think there's just a lot of like environmental factors that make Tahoe really, really hard. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a tough course. Like I would say personally, I think Cocodona is easier course in my opinion. I think that because I also think in Tahoe, if you're not a strong mountain runner, which again, like, I think people can become better mountain runners and stuff. That's the course. Whereas like Cocodona, if you're not a strong mountain runner, you got a lot of flat runnable stuff. And you don't have a lot of flat runnable stuff, you'll shine in the first 37, up Hangover, up Eldon at the end. Like you have moments to shine out there. Whereas like if they're not your strength suits in Tahoe, like it's going to be a tough grind throughout for sure.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think on Tahoe you have to be mentally engaged the whole time. There's no gimme sections, where in Cocodona you can just kind of go into zombie mode.
For sure, like that, especially when you get in the plateau and those dirt road sections. I mean, you can just literally click the mind off and go. Whereas like you do got to be engaged, and then if you have Tahoe Lung, you got to be even more engaged because you're monitoring your breathing and your respiratory lungs are almost there. So yeah, that's actually a good point, Peter. I didn't really think about that. I felt like mentally I was just on the entire time for a 200-mile race, which is a lot. I mean, it's a long time to be mentally on. I've been mentally on for 100 miles and even kind of got off that and be like, that was a lot. And for 200, I mean, that was a long time to be engaged. That's why I think for me, it was the hardest mental battle that I've ever been in an ultra marathon ever.
So now with your second 200 plus mile finish, looking back to yourself before Cocodona, what have you learned about the distance, or what are you understanding now that you didn't know before starting this journey?
It's such a great question. And I've learned so much. And man, I think the 200-mile distance is my favorite because, and a lot of people ask me that question, is like, you learn so much in these things because you learn a lot in 100 miles. And it's like, you get double the amount of lessons in a 200 because it's double the distance, which is so cool. And I think a few things, I think from like an execution standpoint, I think the biggest thing that I've realized in these trids is that if you really want to increase your time, even without increasing fitness, like if you can run the sections that you can run as much as you can chop down your time greatly. Like for me, if even going to Arizona Monster, even though I had a DNF there, like if I look at my first 200 miles there, it was significantly well better executed than Cocodona for me, because at Cocodona, I just walked a lot of the stuff because I was tired, I was sleepy, like my brain was playing tricks in terms of like, oh, you have 100 miles to go, so you might as well walk this flat section. It's like, no, like I think if you can run a lot of the flat and downhill sections as much as you can, depending on your skill level and depending on what your time is, you can chop down your time significantly. So like I made a rule for myself at Tahoe. I was like, anything that's uphill, I'll likely walk. And then anything that's flat or downhill, like I'm going to try to run. Even if it is a 13, 14, 15-minute mile run shuffle, like that's going to be way better compounded over miles and miles and miles than doing a 22-minute per mile walk on flat. So that really helped me a ton and it also just helps to keep you a little bit more just kind of variety and just kind of switch things up a little bit more and keeps you just kind of in the hunt. So that was the first thing execution wise. I think the second thing that I learned is I think we can go so much further feeling bad for a long period of time than we think. Now, you might say, well, that's obvious ultra advice, Joe. Like that's the whole epitome of ultra marathons. But in these 200 miles, I always tell people the way that you feel in these 200s do not compare to 100s. Like it's just a whole different beast. And the first time I experienced that at Cocodona, I was like, holy crap, like how can I go feeling this bad for another 50 miles? I was at mile 200 at that point. At Tahoe, I was at mile 100 and I felt just as bad. And in that moment, I remember there's a picture of me with my hands in my face. I'm like, oh, and I remember just thinking to myself, how am I going to go another 100 miles? And then I thought back to Cocodona and I was like, wait, I finished Cocodona. And so it was like, okay, well, you can keep going even though you feel so bad right now, even though you feel so terrible. And you almost give yourself permission to just say like, hey, you just keep going even though you feel like this terrible and this bad right now. And I would say that like the degree of how bad you feel is not related to, the recommendation of if you should stop or not. And I think I've learned that the most in 200s. And the biggest lesson I've learned, to wrap it up on the third thing, and I learned this in Cocodona, it was, I was at Cocodona, I was at mile 190. It was the lowest point ever that I've ever had in an ultra. And my mind was spinning. I was hallucinating. I was like, couldn't keep my mind straight. And I was trying all these like 100-mile tricks to like, do mantras and redirect my thoughts and like try all this stuff. And nothing was working. And I was like, how can I fix this? And then one sudden realization came to mind that just changed everything for me. It was, hey, you're 190 miles in. You slept for 2 hours. Of course, you're going to feel horrible. And that's okay. Stop trying to fight it and just move on. And it's okay to feel like crap. And in that moment, I didn't feel better, but I felt more content. And I felt like this weight lift off. And when I stopped resisting feeling bad and just accepted it and moved on with it, that was great. And that was the biggest thing, is like, you have to be like accepting of the pain. Whereas like in these hundreds, it's like, oh, you get these negative thoughts, you got to redirect it and blah, 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 and do all that stuff. And that stuff's helpful in the beginning of a 200, but you get so deep in these races that you can't even click it off. Like, you just got to be okay with it. You got to move forward, and you can't use that as a signal to stop. And I think that's my biggest insight and biggest lesson to anyone taking on a 200, and something that, even in my second 200-mile finish, it's just as important as the very first one.
Yeah, I think that's gold. I mean, the can't use it as a signal to stop is really important. And I think you need to do that work that you're referring to like well beforehand. Like that needs to be part of your training, part of your prep, because it actually released today, the day that we're recording this. We recorded an episode with Borja Gonzalez, who's a sleep researcher. And super fascinating episode. And so much of, I think, the big difference between these hardships in 200s versus hundreds is that sleep deprivation, variable. And just the like talking to it with him about the breakdown in emotion regulation and like cognitive function and decision making is so drastic on that second and third night compared to a one night in 100. So you really are like, you're not you're not the version of you that you were before the race. So it's important to like create a framework beforehand and stick to it regardless of what the current you is telling you to do, which is not, way easier to do said than done.
For sure. And I love how you mentioned like you don't feel like you out there, because there were moments out there where I literally did not feel like myself. It was so funny. One of my pacers, she was asking a question because we were just having conversation out there, and she was like, when do you feel like the most like you in your life? And the initial gut response was running. And then I thought like back into the experience of Tahoe, and I was like, I don't know if that's the right answer, because there was some sections where literally, like towards the end, when you're coming up to Spooner Summit after the Spooner aid station and you're kind of in that exposed area, I swear to you, if you asked me where I was like, we're in Scotland right now. I was like, we're 100% in Scotland. I'm so excited to be out in the Scottish hills. Like, this is beautiful. And like, I tried, and then I realized, I was like, wait a minute, we're not in Scotland. And I was like, wait a minute, like, who am I? Like, what's my name? Like, I lost my sense of identity. It was really scary and really, really weird. And, yeah, I mean, to literally go that deep, to not know like who exactly you are out there. Now, I'm not saying that happens to everybody. For me, it was just, I just tried to push the bounds of it, but it is so scary where your mind goes, and you got to be prepared to face that. You got to be prepared to understand that you're going to go in some dark spots. And I think a question I ask every athlete before they go into any race, not even just 200 miles, is what is your plan to do when it gets really hard out there? And it seems like such a basic question, but to your point, Kevin, it's like, if you don't do that in the beginning of your training, like if you don't have a plan, like you plan to fail. Because I always say, like, what's predictable is preventable. Not preventable in the sense that you're not going to go through low times or you're not going to face hardship, but if you know that you face a hardship and you have consciously planned out what you're going to do, then when that hardship comes up, you remember that answer, you remember that plan, you deploy that plan. And if it doesn't work, deploy another plan, but at least you have something. Whereas like, if you just get hit in the face and you expect this race to be amazing and awesome and butterflies and rainbows and good times, like buckle up, because it's going to be tough. And I don't say that to scare people away. It's just like a reality of the sport. And it's like, you got to prepare to go to war with the mind. And as intense as that sounds, it's, I think it's one of the keys that helps people, because anytime I ask athletes that, the people who have the clearest answer are the ones who usually have the best results that I work with, for sure.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think like I'm a broken record with this, what I'm about to say here, but I think part of that question also needs to be is like, okay, are you prepared to go to war? Are you prepared for that? And when is that going to happen? When does that war start? Because I bet if you ask that question, they all say, oh, maybe, I mean, worst case, mile 80, like hopefully mile 125, 150. But for some people, it starts at mile 16. And if you are preparing for a war at mile 80 and it happens at mile 16, you are going to be, on your heels.
Oh, such a good caveat. Yeah, because it's the expectation game, right? It's like you expect something to happen at mile 80 and it happens at 16. Like, what does your brain logically say? Oh, if I'm feeling this bad now, what's it going to be later? And I love that extra part of that question, which is amazing because I always tell people, like, don't expect when it's first going to suck because you just got to roll with the punches. And for Tahoe, for me, I mean, it was mile 15. Like, I felt terrible at mile 15 and didn't feel much better until mile 190. And it's like, okay, well, we're at 15 here. Okay, that's fine. Like, and you hope that it's going to go. And I always tell people, like, just believe that it's going to get better, believe that it's going to turn around. Like, one very memorable conversation that I know you've also had her on the podcast, Ashley Paulson, when she talks about her Cocodona experience, she was like, I was just believing the whole time that it would get better because she did it like battling sickness and other stuff too. And I remember asking her, I was like, did it get better? And she's like, no. She's like, but I believed every single moment that it got better. And that like really resonated with me because it's like, it doesn't matter whether or not you get better or not. It just matters, do you believe it's going to turn around? Because if you don't believe it's going to turn around, you're going to walk because why bother wasting the energy? You're going to just mail it in. You're just going to not do your very best. But if you believe it's going to turn around, you give yourself a chance. And even if it doesn't, like, you do way better than when you didn't believe it. And I think that's like something I just believed in the turnaround the entire time that really didn't come until 190, but still, like, the belief is what matters the most.
So let's dive into your race a little bit in particular. So what started happening at 15? Was it Tahoe Lung starting to creep in immediately?
I looking back on it, I wasn't sure because I got into the first aid station, which was Armstrong Pass the first time, and like I was just breathing a little bit heavier than normal, and I just chalked it up to the altitude because I was like, there is no way I'm having Tahoe Lung this early or anything as such too. But yeah, I just felt like I was just breathing really, really heavy out there, and I just chalked it up to the altitude. Then I like took a second at Armstrong Pass to just like sit down, just catch my breath. And I told myself in the next section I was going to lower my intensity a little bit because I was like, okay, maybe I just need to lower this. And I lowered my intensity, and still the breathing just was getting worse and worse and worse, and started just to cough up things and everything. And that's when I went to Housewife Hill and I saw Aaron Kabbalah there, who was supposed to race and unfortunately didn't. Very nice guy, very talented athlete. Truly believe he would have been easily top 5 if he had raced out there too. But I remember he was asking me, he's like, is everything okay? I was like, I'm breathing. And he's like, do you feel like it's the dust, or do you feel like it's Tahoe Lung, or do you feel like it's altitude? And I was like, I feel like it's too early for Tahoe Lung, right? And he's like, yeah, I agree. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm just getting clocked by the altitude. And I remember just leaving that aid station, and like right as I left, I'd coughed, and I just coughed up this like yellow, just like liquid. And I looked at a tree, and it literally was the same color of like all this pollen that was on the tree. And I was like, oh boy, I think I got it. Like, I was like, I think this is it. And that's when I kind of realized, I was like, oh, I think this was Tahoe Lung. And it just progressively started to just get worse and worse and worse and worse. And it was really frustrating because, I felt my legs were great. They ended up feeling a little destroyed at 100, but then they did come back. But everything else felt good. Like, I felt like I can push. Like, my mind was spry, like everything too. But it just felt like I had this governor on me, like this respiratory governor that just wouldn't let me go even more. And, I just believed that it would keep getting better and better and better and better. And it just kind of kept spiraling. But yeah, I mean, I think it was Tahoe Lung really at mile 30 where it confirmed, and it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I think everybody I talked to, I didn't chat with one person who like didn't get it out there. So that was like kind of reassuring, but yeah, that was wild to face it out because everyone told me, they were like, "Oh, you'll face it at 90 or 100." Similar thing of what you said before. So I was like, "Oh my god, I have this at 30. Like, what the heck am I gonna do?" But I believed. I was like, "It's gonna turn around. It's gonna get better. Like it always does. Like it never always gets worse. Like we're just gonna keep trucking on." And even though it didn't, we still moved forward the best we could.
Yeah, and I think that like the expectate like there's so much room for troubleshooting at 200s is what I'm trying to say. And at Tahoe, it's one of those things where like the aid stations are so much further apart. So you almost have a little less of that troubleshooting or less help with troubleshooting, whether it's your crew or your aid station volunteers or like just these checkpoints for troubleshooting. At Tahoe, you're looking at like 5 to 8 hours between most stretches, which is a really long time. You're getting, for the most part, shorter aid stations at other 200s, so you have less time to like puke and rally and like troubleshoot and try to problem solve for these things. And I mean either literally puke and rally or just sort of like like send it and try to fix it. Did you feel that out there? Like, did you feel more alone? And like, I know you had crew and pacers, but like I feel like you end up spending more time in aid stations in general at Tahoe because there are these oases that are so far out in the distance each time.
100%. I definitely felt it. I mean, I remember, and with Tahoe, right? It's like you look at 4 miles left, and like 4 miles on like a casual run, you're like, oh, great. But you in that 4 miles, I mean, especially that is like jumping to the end, but the second to last mile, I think has like 800 or 900 feet of gain. Like it's just the wildest end to a race. And it's like, you look, I'm 2 miles left, and then you're just literally just climbing up this like huge climb at the end. It's long miles, unless you have like some descending section. So yeah, I mean, that got to me for sure. Just like knowing that I wasn't going to see crew for another 4 or 5 hours. Now, the good thing about my crew is I did tell them, and I was like, I need to hustle in and out. So I think my aid stations were pretty good. I think the longest I spent at an aid station, it was with a 25-minute sleep, was like an hour. And then everything else was about 10 minutes to maybe 30 minutes. So it was like pretty efficient, but that was tough because I told myself, and I kind of prepared myself beforehand. And this is again kind of going back to the thing of like preparing to go to war. I told myself, I remember sitting in the car and just being like, I'm prepared for like no aid station stop to be relaxing. Like I was like, I'm prepared to like be business oriented and like get this thing like in and out and like do what I need to do and like take care of myself and just go. So I think just like knowing that was kind of helpful. And then going to the aid station, it was like, hey man, you're gonna want to chill and reset here, but it's like you got to get in and out. And I think in my old self, like if you ask old Joe, like old Joe is a aid station lingerer. Like I lingered at aid stations. I had fun. Like, and me, like I chat with people. So like my crew, like they'll position me away from people because they know I'm going to chat and talk and everything such too. So shout out to my crew for just knowing like my weaknesses out there. But now I'm kind of in like the mindset of like, the quicker I go, the faster I'm going to be finished. And I don't say that in a way to be like, I want to just not be out there and not have fun and stuff too. But if you think about it, like one of the reasons why we stay at an aid station, and this is more in the lens of like, if you're trying to go for a good time, right? Like a good time for you, whatever that is. Like if you're just out there to finish and you want that experience to be long aid stations and have that fun, go for it. Great. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just talking this in the lens of like, oh, I want to get a PR. I want to shave time off my current time, whatever that might be, right? You really need to be efficient in those aid stations. So my whole thought process behind that is like, okay, well, if my logic here is that I want to stop at this aid station to, like feel good and essentially like go away from that pain, the quickest and most efficiently way to do that is to be in and out of this aid station, obviously take care of myself, do what I need to do, but just get back out there because it's gonna hurt even getting back out there anyways. And if I really want this to like pain to go away, then it's gonna be at the finish line. So let's just start going to that. So I almost like play this logic game with my mind to be like, okay, well, if I really want to like be away from this pain, let me just do it by being out there. Now, of course, the biggest thing is like at aid stations, make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Like I'm a big fan of like not having arbitrary times at aid stations. Like a lot of athletes ask me, they're like, how much time should I spend at each aid station? I'm like, don't come up with a time with that. Like come up with a list of the things that you need to do, make sure those things are done, and then get out of there if you want to get out of there. Because if someone, this is a mistake that I made early on, I was like, I'm going to be 5 minutes at each aid station, but I'd be 5 minutes, hit the clock, and I still have like 3 other things on my list, change my socks, all that stuff. And I'm like, oh, 5 minutes is gone, I go. And then all of a sudden I'm getting blisters because like I didn't have, any sock change or things like that too. So my whole mantra was like, do what you need to do, be efficient, get it in and out. And if you really want this to be done, get it done to the finish. And that was like my whole kind of mindset with.
I love that. I can't remember who we interviewed, but someone said that a goal for their race was to never be comfortable, and I think that plays into it. Is the aid station is not there to get comfortable; it's there to fix things and keep going.
100%.
Yeah. So you mentioned sleep, and actually that was going to be my next question. Is when we were doing the course previews, actually sleep kind of jumped out as a funny thing in this race. Is there aren't many places to sleep if you want to sleep in a car. So I guess walk us through what was your sleep plan going in and what ended up happening? Where did you sleep?
Yeah, that is such a good call out because yeah, like Brockway Summit, like your pacers and crew are walking in. Like so you do not have that car there with you. And that that was the spot where I slept, and I realized that like, when they have like a tent all set up, I was like, "Oh, wait." And then they're like, "Yeah, we have to hike in." I was like, "Oh, wow, okay." Yeah, and you don't get a sleep station for that first 100K. I mean, like they'll have cots and stuff like that, but it's like you got to get to Heavenly to get that first sleep station and everything and such too. So I'll tell you what my plan is. I'll tell you what actually happened. So, I mean, my plan, I initially wanted to go for like 50 to 52 hours, which in my opinion, if you're like really managing caffeine well, like you don't need to take a really big planned sleep. Like I was planning to go with maybe a 120-minute dirt nap for like 52 hours. Now what happened was because of the Tahoe Lung, I knew that wasn't going to be the case. My finish time ended up being 67 hours. And so at that point, it's like, yeah, you got to at least sleep some. So I kind of had to wing it on the fly, really, out there. And so my whole plan was, I mean, and this is always my standard plan. It's like if I find myself hallucinating losing my mind, not knowing where I'm at, or if I'm doing that, like, we've all been there in these 200s, like where you do that like hiking pace where you're going like 30 minutes a mile, but you think like you're killing it. And then you look at your pace, or your pace just be like, yo, buddy, like you're going at like 2 miles an hour here, right? Like if I'm seeing that, then I know it's probably time to hit the dirt. So I would usually take like a 10-minute dirt nap or such. The only time I slept at an aid station long sleep was I had just got done with the power line climb section. So it was just after mile 100. And I knew that the nighttime was coming up. And for me, like I'm a very big like proponent, and I learned this from Jeff Browning and stuff, is like trying to time your circadian rhythms if you can. And so knowing that the sun was going to go down and then melatonin was just going to start naturally producing in my body, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take this 20-minute sleep here in this tent and get to a position where I can at least get a good sleep and, have at least that 20-minute bigger sleep. In hindsight, I probably should have taken a longer sleep. Personally, I think I was still very optimistic. I could have gotten mid 50s at that point, and it just didn't kind of work out. Like I probably going back would have taken a 40-minute sleep, which I think if anyone listening to this is trying to find a sleep strategy, this is the way that I explain it to my crew and pacers. Cause I had some pacers out there who like, I told them at some points, cause I was hallucinating and stuff. I was like, I need a nap here. And some of my pacers, and I granted, I'm not saying anything's wrong with this too, but they were like, keep pushing. And I was like, hey, like the way that I see this is like an investment. If I take 10 minutes now, if I invest this 10 minutes to take this dirt nap now, I bet you that I can probably shave 20 minutes off my time. Right? It's just like a monetary investment, right? If you know that you're going to put like $10 into investment and you're going to get $20 back, like you're going to make that investment all day. Right. Whereas like if you know that maybe you take 20 minutes and you're not going to net anything else from it, like you're probably not going to make that investment. So it's hard, right? Because there's no scientific calculation on that. Everyone's different. It depends on how fatigued you are. But that's how I always say to look at sleep is like, what are you depositing and what's the time return you're going to get in the benefit from that? And usually that time return is going to come in, feeling good and everything as such too. So I done that 20-minute nap. And then basically from then on, I only did like 10-minute dirt naps, like sporadically, only when I felt really tired. And I tried to just pound caffeine as much as I could. And I think I pushed it a little bit too much because towards the end, like at mile 190 or so, I mean, I was in that state that I mentioned. I was in Scotland and I didn't know where I was. And I'll never forget, like my pacer told me, I don't remember this at all. My pacer told me, he's like, dude, are you with me right now? And he said, I like turned around, had like the most wide eyes, and I just go, no, I'm not. And he's like, you need to sleep right now. And so, I mean, I had no plan going into it because I thought I was going to finish sooner, but you got to adapt on the fly. And I think my biggest thing is like, if you don't have a plan, which you should for sleep, but if you don't have a plan, you really just got to time it for when you feel tired. And if you need like a giant mental reset or physical reset, like take a big sleep. Like there was one guy who was behind me. He finished ahead of me. And at Tahoe City, I did not sleep. I just went through it. And the guy took a 90-minute sleep. I never saw him again. Never saw him again. He just like zoomed past me. He looked so great. He was running 9-minute miles. And I was like, that dude just made the investment of 90 minutes and probably got back 2 hours in return. And even if it's a break even investment, it's good because you feel better. Right. So I think sleep's like a tricky thing. Like if I were to really dial it down, and what I work on with my athletes is, try to sleep on the first night if you can. It's all going to depend on like what your goals are, right? If you're going for a 100-hour finish, you're going to sleep more. If you're going for a 70-hour finish, you're going to sleep a lot less. First night if you can. If you're not tired, okay, don't force it. Keep going. Sleep at that first time you're tired. I always like to sleep on the second night if you can. And then basically after that second night, try to take naps accordingly to how you feel. And then the time is going to be degreed on like, do you feel trash or do you feel good? But sleep's a tricky thing. And to wrap a long point up here too, I'm sure you guys feel the same way. It's like, you interview all these people, and one of the biggest thing is like that we do as podcasters, all three of us here, is like we try to find like common like strategies and stuff. And I think sleep is one of the things where it is I have not found a very common thread between a lot of people. And I think that's like the drawback of doing a 200 for the first time is you got to figure out what works for you. And so that's like the handicap going into it. But once you do, you start to figure it out a little bit more. And yeah, I'm still figuring it out on the second 200 for me, but I think I'm closer than I was before, which is good.
Yeah. And then, referencing back to that sleep podcast Kevin was mentioning, I think something that we learned from there is we're still really early days with even understanding sleep in these long distances. There's some big fundamental questions that there's just aren't answers to yet. And there's not really, many people looking at it yet. So, but the interesting thing is this guy did his PhD specifically on sleep in long distance ultras. So I think we'll get there one day, but yeah, it's the Wild West.
Yeah, for sure. I almost like think like, are these like you're seeing like 100 miles right now, like is getting all this revolution in science and high carb and all this stuff. I cannot wait to see what that's like with 200s. Like, it's just gonna. I feel like we're gonna have a kind of renaissance moment like we're having with the hundreds right now, where people are just shattering these course records. And when this comes to 200s, like, who knows? Like, maybe you just see like a 50-hour, sub 50-hour Cocodona, which would be just like insane. But who knows? Like, maybe the science catch ups and people figure it out. And I think if sleep's the thing, like, like, you're gonna see some times go down for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe zooming out for a second, this is your second 200 plus mile attempt of the year. So, with the Monster, you were having a great race. You got taken out by an injury, but you still made it 200 miles. So what did you learn from the Monster? What did you take out of the Monster that you applied at Tahoe?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, and the thing that I also told myself in the middle of the race in the beginning was like, bro, you ran yeah, you got a DNF, and yeah, you didn't get that bell, but bro, you still ran 200 miles, Joe. Like, maybe this is just why you feel like crap, because you ran 200 miles like less than 2 months ago, right? So I think the biggest thing that I learned from the Monster is I do think at some level in these races, like, if you really want to be the best that you can be, and I'll take this from David Roche, like, I'll take his exact wordings because I think it's good. And I say this with caution, and I'll give the big caveat on it, is you almost kind of want to disrespect the distance a little bit. Now, I say that with caution because don't just wing. That doesn't mean wing a 200 miler. That doesn't mean wing it. Like, what I mean by the disrespect the distance, what David means when he talks about it is like, don't let that distance like dictate like how you're going to strategically operate out there. And for me, for like the Arizona Monster, like when I got on that bike path, when I got in these flat sections, I knew I needed to run. And everything in my being, like even logically, right? It's like, okay, well, you're at mile 130 and you have 170 miles to go. Like, why would you even be running on this section? Now, granted, I'm running at a low intensity, but the inclination is to walk. The inclination is to take your time. The inclination is to be slow, which are very important things to do. But I told myself, I was like, you know what? Like, if I keep executing and if I'm at a lower intensity and if I keep fueling and if I keep making sure like all this stuff and I make sure that my sleep is okay, my blisters like prevention's all good, like, why not just give it a shot and just go for it? And that was like the Arizona Monster for me. Like, I took a shot and I went for it. And I told people, I was like, I'm going to go for the win and I'm going to race this. Like, and I use the word hard subjectively because it doesn't mean I was like, redlining at this, like for the first 200 miles. No, it was still easy, but I definitely like pushed the dial a little bit more. And I think the big experience for me there was like, don't be afraid to try to find like what that line is for you. And I found that line physically for me because my knee gave out. And it was like, well, if you want to run these things like super hard, you have to do strength training to go into this. And, I think that was the biggest lesson that I learned, Peter, to give a big roundabout answer is like, yes, disrespect the distance, but if you do disrespect the distance, maybe prepare to like learn some lessons on what you're going to get from that. And my whole thing was like, yes, Joe, you can run these 200 miles hard, but if you want to do so, you got to be in that gym much more times than you're currently doing, because I had found out that I had like a muscular imbalance in my hips, and basically over 100 miles, which I've done before, totally fine. You get that to 200 miles where you're running a lot, like that put a lot of stress on my knee and ended up swelling up. So the big consensus was, yes, I can do this, but I need to be in the gym. So what I did was I hired a strength coach, and then I was in the gym 4 days a week for every week, pretty much from the Arizona Monster until Tahoe. And what was interesting is like before the podcast or before we kind of dove into it right earlier in the podcast, I said I wasn't good at mountains. I wasn't like a really good mountain runner and stuff. And when I went out to Tahoe to do a training camp like weeks before, like I was running grades that I never thought I could run before. Like I was running these sections and it was like astonishing to me. I was like, oh my gosh. And I started doing a little bit more research, and the power that you generate from your legs and the running economy developments, like all this stuff just comes in from strength training. And, I was very much a proponent of like, I thought strength training was like an optional when it came to these 200s, but I genuinely think now it's like near a requirement. Even if you're just doing it one time a week, just because your muscles get battered and torn. And, one way that Ben Light explained it to me that I thought it was so interesting is that he's like, at a certain point in these 200s, your aerobic system is just going to go. Like that's just how it is. It's going to go, and then it's going to not get any worse, and you're going to carry on. And then at that point, like your biggest advantage and what's going to determine whether or not you're limited to other people is how strong your muscles are. Like, are they going to break down a lot less? And of course, you can do a lot of volume to help with that too. But I truly believe there's something in that strength piece that keeps the legs going strong, because at mile 90, like I didn't feel any soreness in my legs. I felt really good. Like I felt fresh. And so I think a big just like lesson that I learned from like the physical application is that like strength training will benefit you in 200 milers. And even if you're just doing it one time a week and you're going from 0 time a week, like you will see the benefits from it. And that's why like I always say, look at the chase. Watch the chase. Every single athlete documented in there is in the gym. every single athlete, and they were all like top contenders, right? And I don't think that's coincidence by any means, too. So I guess the two things is like strength training, and then I think from the Arizona Monster is like take the shot. And sometimes you might find that like you can go further and you can go harder and you can go stronger than you thought you were. Because after the Arizona Monster, I came out of that because before, if you asked me, I had signed up for Tahoe and I was like, I'm just going to finish this thing. But I came out of that being like, I think I could win Tahoe if I really have a good day out there. Now, granted, it didn't happen, but I believe that to be true. And I only believe that that happened if I put myself in that situation. So for anyone listening, put yourself in those situations like where you do take a little bit of risk, where you do go out and just say like, you know what, I'm just going to take the shot here. You got to be okay with potentially blowing up and you got to be okay with potential downsides. But the upside that you get from that is like unreal because you just shatter your expectations of who you thought you were previously. And like that to me, like the Monster, even though it was a DNF, was like one of the biggest confidence boosters for me like ever as an athlete. And I think that's just so cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's something I struggle with is like, you really have to be okay with, yeah, you might not finish. Like that is a real risk if you're going to disrespect the distance, to use the same phrase, but like, you're also going to have so much more potential for growth and learnings, and yeah, maybe that perfect storm happens where, everything comes together and you have that breakthrough, because it's likely not going to happen if you're being too respectful of the distance. So
Mm-hmm.
it just, I mean, it depends on what your goals are. If your goals are just safe to finish, then sure, like do all the things, take the time, be cautious, be respectful of the distance. But I think there's a lot of truth in that, like where the growth and the leaps forward happen are in that disrespectfulness, to keep using that analogy. Yeah, super cool. So, you mentioned that the 200s are your favorite distance. And I think it's one of the unfortunate, but also really cool things about 200s. And sure, there's people who do tons of them. Adam Williams is doing what, 8 or 9 of them this year. It's like,
He's a beast. Yeah,
yeah,
he is unreal.
yeah, we're gonna have him on, but I told him he has to finish every single one of them, so
Yep,
pressure's on.
exactly. And he
So
will. He's
yeah,
a
oh,
strong dude.
he is super strong. But like in general, if performance is your primary goal in these races, there's a limit on how many you can do to perform at your personal best. Like, sure, you may still be able to compete. We see people like Harry is competing at the Triple Crown and still, but he's probably not beating Harry, at Cocodona. You know what I mean? Because like there's a tax that these races cost. What do you think that tax is? And like, do you think, like, I think a lot of people put pressure on themselves because they're, to take that risk, to disrespect that distance, to shoot your shot and believe that you might not have another shot until next year. It might be a full year in between shots, which doesn't sound that long, but when it comes to like racing, it kind of is. Cause if you fuck up a 50K, you sign up for 2 week, 2 weeks later, but if you mess up your 200 plus, there's a lot more invested in all aspects, financially, time commitments, all that stuff. So yeah, I don't even know. I lost my question, but like, what's your take on like the magnitude and the
Mhm.
scope of like these races compared to shorter ultras?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you raised like a great point there because there is. I mean, there's a lot of stakes in this. And, these races, the whole experience, just registration side, are not cheap, right? Because you likely have to travel. If you're not traveling, then at least you got to have all the gear and the food and the nutrition and everything on there. Like, it's a lot of investment time too, because to train for these things is not a walk in the park. It is a time commitment and everything and such too. So I get like there's some high stakes. So I think my always recommendation is kind of like what you recommended or what you were kind of alluding to is that if you don't feel comfortable shooting your shot at a 200, like you don't have to start there. Like shoot your shot at a 50K, shoot your shot at a marathon. Like, hey, even shoot your shot at a 50 miles, something that's like low stakes for you. And for me, like before I did that in the 200, like I really shot the shot in the 100-mile distance. Like, I raced Javelina 3 years in a row because I really wanted to just like find like what that potential was for me. And then after at that point, like I really wanted to like know that if okay, I found my stuff at the 100-mile, like that gave me more confidence to try it at the 200. I don't think you have to like make the leap and bound to 200 at first. Like you can try to find it at that shorter kind of stint too, right? Like, and just see like where it's at. Because again, like you said, if you fuck up a 50K, like you're totally fine, right? But if you fuck up a 200 mile, it's a big thing too. But I think also too is I, and it's going to depend on the person and it's going to depend on what you want. But I think for me specifically, one thing that's really helped me in life, because and a big reframe in my whole life, and this has just dramatically changed everything that I do, was when I grew up, I was very much a kid that I wanted to make everything perfect. And I wanted every single result to be perfect. I wanted to make sure that like I got a good grade on every test that I did. I wanted to make sure that, if I talked to the girl, that she was guaranteed that she was going to say yes to me. And, I was always just so caught up in the results. And what really just shifted my mind, I read a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, which is just so incredible. But one of the big theses of that book is like, don't put your weight so much in the outcome, put your weight so much in the process. And like for me, like a lot of people came up to me after Arizona Monster and they were like, do you feel like you wasted a lot of time? Like knowing that you didn't get that belt buckle, knowing that you didn't finish. I hired a documentary team to come out and film me. Like I had invested so much money on this like race, like with gear and everything as such too. Like I put all that stuff. I even put like amount of emotional investment by like going out and saying, I'm going to win, I'm going to win, I'm going to win. And then I don't even finish the race. And a lot of people ask me like, did you just waste a lot of stuff? And I'm like, no, I didn't waste anything, because I think it's all about the person you become in the process. And like, that's the biggest goal of it all. Like for me, like training for that race was one of the coolest experiences, because like I put in a block that was so different than any of my other training blocks, and I learned so much and I gained so much confidence, and I gave myself the chance and the shot to do it. And I went out in that race, and yeah, of course, like I flew close to the sun and I burned up and I failed and I put down. But to be honest, like I think without that, there's no such thing as a top 10 Tahoe, and there's no such thing as me feeling like as like fulfilled as I was now. And so like for me, like my encouragement for people, and it doesn't have to be a 200-mile race, it can be, I know a lot of people who like really want to start a business, but like they're really like afraid to, because like they're like, what if I fail out here? Or like maybe they see that, person that they want to potentially start a relationship with, but they don't talk it because like they're afraid of the failure. It's like, don't be afraid of the failure. Like be excited about the person you become by just trying. And I always think about that Teddy Roosevelt quote. It's like, it's not about the person who succeeds or fails. It's about the man who's in the arena. And whether or not they fail or they succeed, like they have still won. And, there's a big paraphrasing on there too, but like that's the truth. And it's like, I'd rather like give it my all at something and become this amazing person who believes in themselves to their abilities and fail miserably, than to just waltz my way through something and succeed and, not give an ounce of effort, or like not grow, or, sign up for a race that has like, not a lot of competitive people and just go out and blow it out of the water. Like I'd rather be challenged and fail than to have an easy victory. And I think that's the thing for me, like where I think people can like move that line a little bit more, is like, man, put your like self-esteem and your worth and everything in the process of how you tried, because anything can happen on race day too. For me with the knee, and granted I had to go through and do strength training, but some people, they clip a rock and they fall. And then it's like Matt Johnson, like poor Matt Johnson, man, like mile 30, he like clipped a rock and like broke his like ribs and his jaw. Like, it's like, dude, that, that just happened out of nowhere. And like, he spent all this money, and like that just happens. And so for me, that's why I always say it's about the process over the outcome. And I think when you do that, like that line between like, should you go for it or not, becomes a little bit more attainable, because it's not about the outcome. It's about who you become. And that's the coolest thing I see about the whole journey.
Yeah, very cool. So now that you've done a number of these, do you think coming out of Tahoe, is it feeling like it's kind of your home now, or is it if you line up for another one, is it going to feel like it's unknown territory where there's still, a lot of growth and learnings to happen?
Yeah, I still feel like there's still a lot for me to learn, which is so exciting. Like I think going through 3 of them, 2 finishes, 1 DNF, there's still so much to learn and explore, and I think that's just so exciting about this sport and this distance. And so I do think it's a blend. Like I think yes, like I'm confident to like reap on the mistakes that I've made in the past, but we always make new mistakes and we always learn new things. And it's kind of like when people say that, like saying, I know it's more money, it's like more money, more problems, right? It's like when you get better at the sport, I feel like there's more problems the better that you get. Like there's just different things that come. And I think that's what makes this sport so amazing. And so for me, even though, yeah, like I feel more comfortable, like I'm also excited at the lessons. Like my next 200 will be, as of now, Cocodona 250 next year for the second time. And I'm so excited to go back and give that race another shot. But there's a lot of uncertainties, because I plan to do things a lot differently than I did Cocodona year one. Like I plan to run as fast as I can. I plan to be a little bit more minimalist with the gear that I take. And like with that comes a lot of risks, right? Like, and I plan to like push it a little bit more on sleep, or maybe take a little bit more sleep. Like, I don't know. I got to think through these things, but I think, yes, I'm confident in the strategy, but there's still a lot of unknown. And I think with the 200-mile distance, even if you're someone like Harry or Jeff Browning or anything, like you got to always be open to that, because I think in any scenario, like the thing I always tell myself, even as a coach and even as someone who literally pays me for like advice and stuff like that, I will never know everything. And I think and in these 200s, like, being that there's not a lot of documented stuff out there besides the Distance Empty podcast, which is like the gold mine for 200-mile podcasts or 200-mile information, there's just still so much to learn. And I think that's the thing that excites me the most. And that's why I love the 200-mile distance, because it's like something to learn. And I think a big experiment that I'm going through this year is like, I, done 200-mile plus races, at least towed the line for them as like my marquee. And then my next race of the year is Kodiak 100-miler. And I'm planning to go fast and I want to get top 10. And like, that's like a whole different beast. And like, that's like my other love, like before 200s was like fast 100s. So I'm curious to see like how I like that and respond to it after doing something like pouring my heart and soul into these 200+ mile races earlier on. And I think it's a beautiful thing about running journeys. Like, man, like I always tell people, like, experiment with the fruits of ultra running, of what it gives you, because there's so many different types. There's 200 miles, there's flat 200 miles, there's like Cowboy 200, then there's Tahoe 200, and then there's also Moab that's in the desert. And there's even from ultra marathon standpoint, there's a 50K, there's a 50K with a crap ton of elevation gain. Like, there's so many different things, and it's like, keep trying it all. And you might find, because if you asked me 3 years ago, Joe, would you love 200 milers? I would have been like, you're nuts. I wouldn't even try that. Like, that's crazy. Like 200 miles, like, no way. Do you die doing that? And like, here I am, like, signed up for attempt number 4 coming up at Cocodona next year and loving it. And I think it's amazing. But the only way that I found that out is just by trying. And that was Cocodona for me. It was just an experiment. Do I love this or not? And I came out of that experience waking up the next morning being like, I want to do this again. And that was so cool. And I've done URA 100, very verdy 100-mile race, 40,000 gain. I woke up the next morning being like, I'm never doing that again. And I know it's a common thing after ultras, but I can tell you almost a year later, I never want to do that again. But that's fine. That's me. But you only find out by trying. And I think that's a piece of advice I give to someone listening. Like, if you've done Moab every year, like, give Bigfoot a try. Like, if you've done Bigfoot every year, give Cocodona a try. Like, like test the fruit. There's so many different fruits in the garden of ultra running, and you learn a lot about what you like and don't like, and makes life a little bit more interesting too.
Yeah, that's why I'm taking a year off Cocodona. Peter and I are signed up for the Brute.
My gosh. Well, I'm excited to hear about that, because I saw that and I was like, that seems wild. Yeah.
We're actually recording this afternoon with Steve and Erica to talk about the Bradshaw Brute and the other stepchildren of Cocodona.
So it's like the first 37, but you take the alternate route from the first year, right?
Yeah, so it's more or less the first 100 uses all the same aid stations, but only like 40% of the course is shared. So it does lots of offshoots and more gain, and just like harder routes, less fire road, more single track.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's awesome. Well, kudos to you guys.
Yeah, we'll learn more chatting with Steve and Erica. But our plan is to then obviously hang out and cheer you and everyone on, and be part of the whole week there. But taking a year off the 250.
Oh, we will miss you. I feel like Kevin Goldberg is a staple at Cocodona, so we will miss you for sure.
Yeah, I'll still be all over the place, and hopefully get to see you out there on the course. Hopefully you have a great second race there, and and we'll Peter's going to be at Kodiak. That's his favorite place. So yeah, cool stuff.
Nice. That's awesome. I know Peter and I raced together at the Monster, which was awesome, and he had a great race out there too. So I'm excited to toe the line with you again, man. That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, Kodiak's all. I was going to mention too, the Bradshaw Brute and Kodiak has the same time cutoff, 36 hours. So that's a whole other factor for the Brute. That's
time. There's a 36-hour cutoff
of all the distances. Yeah.
No crew, no pacers too, folks, for those listening, which is just, that is good on you guys. Like, that is I started out in the beginning saying like Tahoe wasn't like necessarily my cup of tea. Like, that one is if Tahoe isn't my cup of tea, then that is, I don't even know what like the opposite of tea is. Whatever the opposite of tea is, that's what it is to me.
Yeah. All right, Joe, before we let you go, I want to talk about one other ultra endurance event that you participate in, ultra endurance podcasting. So how do you record 6-hour podcasts? So I listen to Everyday Ultra podcasts pretty regularly. And when I do listen to one of your race recaps, it takes me like a week to get through. I feel like I need to like start signing up for a 50K or a 50 miler or something so that I can listen to the episode in one shot. How do you approach those monster length episodes? I assume you do them in parts.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for listening. I appreciate it a ton. Yeah, for those who, so the last Tahoe 200 recap was 6 hours long. I think the Arizona Monster was like 7.5, and then Cocodona was like 5 hours. And so it really started with the Cocodona one, because I did Cocodona, and like I think a whole theme of this whole podcast interview here is that you just learn so many lessons in these 200-mile events. And I learned so much at Cocodona, and that was such a cathartic experience for me, and I took away so much. And also for me, like as a coach, like anytime I do a podcast and I tell a story, like I am always in the lens in my mind of like, what are the lessons that I can share from this? So for me, like, and I'm sure you've listened to the podcast, it's not as much the telling it like the narrative of like what happened. It's like I'll say like, hey, this is what I did and here's why I did it. So you kind of get like this commentary along the way. So that adds some stuff. But I had so much, and I love to talk. Like that's why I have a podcast. Like I'm not gonna lie. Like I love to talk. I think it's great. But I remember doing the first Cocodona episode, and I actually did that one in one sitting. So I did the Cocodona one in one sitting. It was 5 hours, and I remember seeing the time at the end, and I was like, do I release this? Like, what do I do? Like, do I go back and edit it? I was like, no one's gonna listen. This is 5 hours long. What is this, insane? I just put it out there because again, shoot your shot, see what happens. I put it out there, and to do a test, what I did was in the episode, I said, hey, if you listen to the whole thing at the end, like send me wolf emojis on Instagram. And I was like, I'm not going to get one wolf emoji. No one's going to listen, blah, blah. I woke up the next morning and my DMs are just flooded with wolf emojis. And people were like, that was the greatest experience ever. Like, oh my gosh, like that was so amazing. And I was like, oh my gosh, like people are actually listening. Like this is crazy. And so I did for Arizona Monster was the next one. I was like, all right, I'm just going to have no time limit. I'm just going to go. Because the Cocodona, when I saw it was coming on a 5 hours, and I think I skimped at the end. Arizona Monster, I just let it run. It was 7.5. And I was like, oh God, same thing. Same thing though. It's like wolf emojis, boom, bunch of wolf emojis, everything. So I found that people like it. And, you know, for me, like I love to share, and I love to share my experience. And also it almost like acts as like therapy for session for me too, because I get to like process everything out loud, right? I think one of the benefits of therapy is just by voicing out the thing. So I think all that, I just sit there and do it. Now I always give myself a rule, no more than 2 sessions. Why? Because number one, like I found that when I do the second session, I kind of have to listen a little bit to like make sure I don't like repeat myself or anything. And I like to just be in the flow. And I always just tell myself, I was like, it's an ultra marathon and it's right. So yeah, I started to do that, and you know, I love it. I think it's great, and it's just so cool. Like honestly, shout out to everybody who listens to the full episodes of those because it's nuts. But I always have like 2 energy drinks. I got some snacks. Like I'm fueling just like I do in an ultra in these long podcast episodes. So fueling is not just important on the mileage; is important when you're podcasting for long hours too.
I love it. Yeah. So if anyone has a long, very long training run, or maybe they have a goal to run a sub 5 hour 50K or a sub 6 hour 50K, or maybe a sub 7.5 hour 50 miler, go check out Joe's 200 plus mile recaps, and you can use those to sort of pace yourself. You got to finish before Joe wraps up.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. All right. Well, Joe, thanks so much for joining us. Yeah, obviously we mentioned Everyday Ultra podcast. If you listen and like Distance to Empty, we think you'll like to listen to Everyday Ultra podcast too. So go check them out. Everyday Ultra Coaching. We could put your links in our show notes, but thanks for joining us, Joe. We're glad you recovered and look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Keep up the amazing work with these podcasts. They're incredible. As I learn more about the 200s, this is always my go-to source. And man, I'm going to queue up that episode on sleep like right away because your boy definitely needed that one before Tahoe. And so I'm going to use that one going into Cocodona next year for sure.
It was one of my favorites. It was also our longest ever episode. I think it was over an hour and a half.
Nice. I'm excited to listen.
So we're training. We'll get up to that 7 hour mark, Joe.
You guys are going to get there for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Of course. Thank you.
Well, lots of great takeaways from that episode, but nothing more impressive than those 6+ hour ultra endurance podcasts that Joe records. That's truly impressive and a feat of endurance.
Yeah, definitely. And it's been fun following his journey. You know, I think he makes some great points about really putting it out there and rolling the dice with, you know, how you approach these. And that's how you push your own limits. That's how the limits of this distance are getting pushed. So pretty cool to see.
Yeah, no, it's hard not to get hyped when talking to Joe. He just has such great energy, great confidence, and want to be more confident in myself like he is. Like I loved taking those big shots, and I think that's where you grow. So really cool to chat with him, and he's going to crush it at Cocodona next year if he gets it. He's on the wait list, right?
I think so.
I forget, but he'll get in. I'm sure he'll get in. So yeah, awesome. All right, what else we got today, Peter?
Well, you were just at Western States. Any takeaways from that experience?
My biggest takeaway is that they probably need to start limiting crew sizes like they do at Leadville. I mean, it's pretty crazy. A lot of these people, I mean, it's such a hard race to get into. So you go all in, right? And it's like 10, 15, 20 person crews. And like so many of these aid stations are like shuttle access only and like really tight areas. And it was just, some of them were pretty chaotic to get to, and like took double the time it should have. So that was the takeaway from the actual experience. But man, I mean, other than that, it was so awesome. Izzy and I hiked up to the top of escarpment. We got to see all the runners come through. I was so stoked for Abby Hall. She was a former coworker of mine at Training Peaks. So I remember when she first started ultra running, and just her journey has been so amazing. And just, I was just so stoked for her. I really wanted her to do well. And obviously she did better than well. Just an absolutely epic performance. So Gabe Peterson got the elusive Western States buckle after 8 years in the lottery. And yeah, it's a wild experience. If you haven't been to Western States, even if you're not running it, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, for sure. And I was glued to the coverage. That was fun to watch from the couch. They mentioned that they gave out 180 media passes.
That's crazy.
The insanity of that event is something else.
Yeah, it's wild. It's really wild. There's no way to explain it other than to be there. I mean, I guess you get a sense for it from the live stream, but the energy is like no other ultra I've been to.
All right, I think I might switch gears.
You're gonna switch gears? Okay.
Yeah. All right. So we kicked off this episode about fueling for Badwater. So here's a paragraph about fueling from the book I wrote. Switch Gears, Puke, Rally, Repeat. Mastering 200-mile races with bivvies, sunscreen, and Taco Bell. So unconventional fuel sources are not just about maintaining energy. They're about embracing fun, creating memories, and fostering camaraderie with other runners who might side-eye your snack choices. So break free from the shackles of standard ultra running nutrition and take a cue from your inner child or even your fur baby. Fill your race pack with the whimsy and spontaneity that these unconventional options bring, and push through those miles like the adventurous spirit you were always meant to be. In the grand game of ultra running, it's time to level up, one quirky snack at a time. My plan is kind of conventional. Maybe I should throw in some fun stuff.
It's hard to eat fun stuff in the heat, but it doesn't hurt to have it in the van.
Very true.
Yeah. We'll take good care of you. Cool. Thanks for switching gears for us, Peter. Now should we get deep?
Let's do it.
All right, Let's Get Deep is a card game for couples that Peter and I play on the podcast for your enjoyment. There are 3 categories: Icebreaker, Deep, and Deeper. I'll kick us off with your Icebreaker, Peter. What is speaking of your fueling strategy, what is your favorite comfort food?
I think I'm going to go with just Pop-Tarts. I know Izzy loves Pop-Tarts. You spent the weekend with her. But yeah, Pop-Tarts are so good. All right, your Icebreaker. What is something you look forward to every day?
Talking to you, Peter. We talk pretty much every day, and it's always a treat. You know, there's some people who, when they text you, you just smile, and that's you.
Oh, thank you.
Except for when you have to edit something, and I'm waiting for it. Which, between Badwater and editing this and a bonus episode this week, I sense that you're in trouble. Just look at it as a distraction from the things you need and should be doing.
There you go.
All right, Deep for you. Do you have any recurring dreams? And if so, what are they about?
Not really. I'm not one of those people that wakes up and remembers dreams. So, sadly, not really.
Okay, lame, but we'll take it.
Yeah. All right, for you. What fictional villain did you find yourself rooting for?
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that. Man. I mean, it's when you boil it down, it's pretty sad that Voldemort can't handle a bunch of kids, and it's just a little pathetic. I know there's mom, love magic, all that stuff, but it's you almost are come on, man. You got other mega villains that are they would kill to have their nemesis be a 14-year-old weenie wizard. Maybe Voldemort, not really rooting for him, but sort of feel bad for him. Yeah, I'll go with that. I don't know. There's a lot of cool villains out there that you're sort of not rooting for, but like. I feel like it's more I like the villains, but I'm not rooting for them.
All right. We'll go with it.
All right. Deeper for you. What's the bravest thing you've ever done?
Bravest thing I've ever done. I once jumped off a rock into what is it? An alpine lake at 11,000 feet right before it started hailing. That was pretty brave.
I thought you might say that. That's too funny.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
So right. Brave.
And then you're Deeper. Describe yourself in 3 words.
What's it from The Office? Hardworking, something, jackhammer. is what Dwight says when they ask him to describe himself in 3 words. I'll say attention deficit disorder.
Perfect.
That's 3 words.
There you go. Love it.
All right. Let's get deep. Always good. Let's see. What else can we chat about? We re-upped our Janji sponsorship. So thank you to everyone who has supported us and ordered Janji. And we're with them for more time and we're pretty stoked. They are coming out with some awesome stuff this fall and winter that we got a preview of. So very excited to still be continuing to work with them through the end of the year. And like a serious thank you to everyone who has purchased from them. They're feeling the love. We're feeling the love. It's awesome. We still are sending out free hats with any order that you give us proof of that you said that we sent you that way. So the way you can do that, if you're interested, is to place an order at johng.com. Use the code DISTANCE for 10% off. And in the post-purchase screen, it'll pop up. It'll say, how did you hear about Janji? You select podcast. And then another screen populates and it has a list of the podcasts they support. Distance to empty, take a screenshot of that, shoot it to us on Instagram, email it to us at distance2emptypod@gmail.com, whatever you prefer, and give us your name, address, and we will shoot you out a free hat. For those of you who have taken advantage of that and gotten a free hat, we are going to make shirts and run a similar promotion. So you can get a Distance to Empty shirt if you want to place another Janji order. It has to be a recent Janji order. But yeah, we'll keep you posted on that. Also, Mike over at Janji sent us the new Revo Janji pack. Did you get yours, Peter?
I did.
I brought mine to Western States last weekend and wore it crewing the whole time. And it's like, I guess it's billed as like a running/commuter pack. It's got a laptop sleeve. It has like a vest style front of the pack. So it comes with soft flasks. Comes with locking soft flasks, which is really nice. And it has like zippers in the front, similar to like a Zygos or another running pack. But the back is bigger and more for like run commuting or like hybrid travel/running. It was a perfect crew bag. But yeah, I'll probably bring it to Badwater too.
Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to use it yet, but yeah, it seems pretty sweet.
It'll be perfect for Francis.
Yeah, have him bring a laptop up Langley.
Yeah, we have a friend who likes to bring his laptop to the top of mountains, so this is like the perfect pack for that.
That mountain, he brought it up, had a mile with 2,000 feet of gain.
Oh my god, he didn't even end up using it. the laptop, that is. But yeah, and they also have a waist belt. They didn't send us that. I might buy that. That looks pretty cool too. I love my Raid belt, but I'll take a stab at a different belt too. It looks like it has a really great like fitting system where it like molds to different sizes and shapes, and you can like crank it down.
That's cool. Does it use soft flasks?
Yes, I think so. We should know, shouldn't we?
No, I'll check it out.
Yeah, but that looks, I don't even know the name of it, but it looks really cool if you're looking at the pack section on Janji. Anyway, this ad read is turning into us rambling. That's okay. Let's see. What else do we got? We are recording a bonus episode tomorrow about recovery from 200s. So I did a bunch of research, read a bunch of scientific journals and studies, and Peter is going to interview me about all of that, what it takes to recover from a 200 plus mile race, how long things take to recover, and how you should approach running them, you know, in short succession, like something like a Triple Crown or a Monster Dona. So, Peter, did you do tons of research into that doc I sent you?
Not too much yet, but here's a question. I just got an email that I'm accepted into AC 100 on August 2nd. Should I do it?
I think we should let the podcast decide.
Well, I got to make it. Yeah, I guess we're releasing. They want to know it by end of the week, so got to get an answer fast.
All right, so here's the deal. We're going to release this. Can you edit this tonight? Can we release this tomorrow morning? All right, we're going to release this tomorrow morning. By tomorrow evening, we're going to put a poll on our Instagram. So if you listen to this episode tomorrow, please check out our Instagram and vote in the poll. Should Peter accept his invite into, Assassin's Creed 100, Angeles Crest 100? Is there any context? What other races do you have? What's your timeline? Give us some context.
Badwater is July 7th through 9th, and this is August 2nd. So it's literally like, what is that, 3 weeks?
3 weeks. And this was your first 100 back in 2016?
Yeah, that it is.
Yeah. Okay. So 3 weeks, 100 miler, Angeles Crest 100. We'll see what the people say.
And it's the most challenging edition of the race. It's the out and back. It's only the second time it's been an out and back. So it's like 5,000 more feet of gain. So it's a 25,000 feet of gain 100 miler in the heat.
And is it hot it's hot in California in August?
Very. Yeah, this is a hot race, just like Western States.
But you'll be heat acclimated from bad water.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what people say. But yeah, so the bonus episode, we're recording that tomorrow. If you haven't checked out our Patreon yet, we are having a lot of fun over in the Discord. We're working on a ton more bonus content and stuff like that. So I won't go into all the details there, but please check it out in the show notes if you're interested in more Distance to Empty content. Cool. What else we got? Anything? I guess we're good.
We're good.
All right. Let's let you get to editing.
All right.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.